going to make sure you grab these safety glasses, and you'll notice they're numbered, that belong to your station. So when it's your turn, if you're in Station 1, you're going to come up, grab Station 1 safety glasses, put them on. Now, when you come back to the tool wall, you'll notice that each tools are numbered for your station. So your station has a number, and you're going to grab the tools that belong to your station number. Now for the Scribble Bot, you're going to need a few different items. You're going to need your glue gun. You're going to need your soldering iron. You're going to need your wire cutters or wire strippers, and your scissors. And duct tape, number 2. And I'm going to go ahead and simply take these tools back to my station and set them up. When I get my tools back to my station, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the scissors, the duct tape, and the wire strippers, and I'm going to set them aside for a moment. What I'm going to focus on first is plugging in my soldering iron holder and my glue gun. To do that, I'm going to go to the end of the counter or station where the power strip is, and I'm going to plug them in. Now we're going to start with the soldering iron. Both the soldering iron and the glue gun take about 3 to 5 minutes to warm up, so we want to start by plugging them in. Now if this was put away correctly, it should be wound up around the holder, but you'll notice I'm holding it by the handle and I'm unwinding the cord. When I get the cord unwound, you're going to see that it pulls tight into the soldering iron holder. And I can simply pull some of that cord out, and I can plug that in to the power strip. Now when I do that, there should be some lights that come on. So you should see these lights coming on, and it means it's powering up and it's heating up. Now this end will heat up anywhere from about 700 to 900 degrees, depending on which point of the end you're on. At the end of class, when we're done using the soldering iron, we're going to go ahead and carefully unplug it by pulling on the knob on the end. And once again, I'm going to demonstrate this. We pull this tight against the wooden block. So I take that cord, I pull it tight. I then carefully wrap the cord around the holder. So I'm demonstrating it now. I'll demonstrate it a couple more times throughout the video. But I want you to wrap it around, pulling that in tight. We're going to go ahead and unwind it one more time here. And we're going to plug it back in so it's heating up. But so I want to make sure you know how to put it away and how you get it out. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the glue gun and we're going to plug it in. Now once again, the glue gun, the cord's been wrapped around the middle here. I unwind the cord, making sure I'm careful not to touch the end, because if it was being used the previous class period, it could be hot. But this part melts the glue. This one, I'm going to simply go ahead, plug in, and it will start heating up. I know the power strip's on because I saw the lights on the soldering iron. Once again, at the end of class, I unplug by pulling on the actual plug, and I wrap the cord around the middle, being careful not to touch the hot end. And then I take that and I put that away in the shelf that I got it from. But so you've seen how to get it out and how to put it away. So I shouldn't have anybody wrapping the cords up incorrectly. Now there's one other thing we need to do, and that is your soldering iron has a little sponge. And it might be a little dry. If it's dry, we use this to kind of clean off the end of the soldering tip. So what we do is we take it over to the sink and we simply wet it down a little bit, squeeze out the excess water. Now if your hand's a little too wet, you could get a paper towel, but you're going to simply take this back and put that inside. Now that we have our legs all glued on, we're going to go ahead and set that off to the side for right now, and we're going to work on creating a motor circuit or motor loop. And so what we have is we have our motor, we got our battery pack, and we got a wire. So the first thing we're going to need to do, one of the first things we're going to need to do is we need to strip the wire. Now to do this, we have to, and I know I have a black wire here, so I'm going to try to move where you guys can see it. Your wire could be black, it could be red, okay? But we're going to go ahead and we're going to strip it with the wire strippers. And you'll see there's these little holes right here at the top, and it goes 10, 12. That's the gauge of wire, which means the thickness of the wire. We're going to end up using the one that says 20 on this little black or red wire. But to do that, there's this little lever right here. And I take my thumb and I push that out, and it lets them open up. And so you're going to simply put the wire in that hole that says 20, and you're going to put about 1/4 of an inch away from the end, and you're going to go ahead and you're just going to simply pull that casing off the wire, and then that would get thrown in the trash. Okay. So I'd pull the casing off the other end, put that in the trash. Now if you want, you can pull a little bit more of the casing off of the power strip or power supply as well. So I'm just going to add a little more length. So I'm just going to go about 1/8 of an inch back on both the black and red. Once again on the 20, and I'm going to go ahead and just get a little bit more of that wire exposed. But so I would go ahead and strip my wires, then I'd give those to my partner, their wires. But once again, we got these little scraps. Make sure you take those and you throw them in the trash can where they belong, not just sweeping them onto the ground. Once you have those stripped though, you're going to go ahead and you're going to create a circuit. And what you're going to notice is there's these little tiny holes down here in your battery pack, or down here on your motor. And if you want, you can kind of lift those tabs up a little bit. But we need to connect one side of the battery pack, doesn't matter which side, to one side of the motor. And I'm just going to simply push it through that little hole, and then I'm going to bend and make a little hook. So it's now kind of hanging on the motor. I'm then going to take the other end, and you have your switch. And when you look at your switch, you're going to see there's these little tiny tabs. And when I look at the switch, there's these little tiny tabs right here, and there's 2 holes, right? And right now the switch is on top of those holes, which means it's on. If I move it off to the side, so it's no longer on top of those, it's off to the side of those, it's off, right? Off, on, off, on. We're going to go ahead and move it off. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that one end of the battery pack through, and once again we're going to kind of hook that around. Now we have our wire that we stripped the ends. We need to twist. So we just take it between our thumb and index finger and kind of twist that wire so it's nice and tight and pointed. Do the same on the other end. Twist it so it's nice and tight and pointed. We're once again going to go ahead, feed that through the hole, make a little hook. Now you want to be careful, and if you want, you can kind of twist this around a little bit too, just to make sure that the wires aren't going to touch each other. All right, so I'm going to bend that up a little bit and just twist that. So you want to make sure those 2 wires aren't touching each other, because otherwise your switch would always be on. We're then going to take the other side, and we're going to feed it through the other end of the motor. And once again, we're going to bend it over, making a hook. And I've created a motor circuit or loop. So you'll see it kind of goes in a triangle or circle, right? Because electricity flows in a circle. We turn it on, it starts flowing. We break the gap, it stops flowing. All right, so we turn it on, flows, turn it off, it stops flowing. But our next step would be to solder these connections. To do that, you're going to get a piece of solder from your instructor, and I'm going to show you where that's at. But we're going to take this and we're going to move it over to the soldering iron, because once again, we move to the soldering iron, not the soldering iron to us. But so first, I'm going to show you where you get the solder. At the instructor's desk, you're going to find, or they'll show you somewhere in the room, where there is a bin of solder where you can get 1 piece for you and your partner. Now eventually, you're going to notice there's some test batteries up here. And once again, station 1, station 2, station 3, station 4, station 5, station 6, right? You grab the ones that belong to your station. Now I have an example here of what your loop or circuit should look like when it's all soldered together. You'll notice there's a piece right here that's missing from ours, and it is a cam lever or an off-balance cam that causes the wobble of your robot. When you come up to get your solder, you're also going to ask your instructor for one of those pieces of glue stick. Your instructor will then give you one to put on your motor. Remember, it does not go in your glue gun. This is going to be for your motor. But so solder is up here, battery is up here. There's also an example you can look at if you're unsure of your connections or what they look like. One of the things to keep in mind when it comes to solder, there's going to be some of you that are like, oh, I'm the Incredible Hulk, I'm so strong, I can bend metal, right? And you're going to think, ooh, shiny. There's some people that just can't handle not playing with something shiny or trying to steal it. If I look at the bottom of the soldering, it says, warning, contains lead, toxic if ingested or fumes inhaled. Wash hands after using and before eating / smoking or drinking. Toxic, right? So this stuff is poisonous. It's fine for the amount that we're going to be using, but you don't want to be eating food while you're using it. And when you're done, you want to go to the sink and wash your hands. Move over to the soldering iron, and if I need to, I can always move the glue gun to the other side, move the soldering iron to this side. Now, sometimes that tip, as I said, might need to be cleaned off. You're also going to notice up by the sink, there is some sandpaper. If you need to, you can take some sandpaper, and I kind of keep it at a low angle, and you can clean off that tip. Right? Especially if it's been being used all day, it might be kind of corroded. And we just want to clean what's called the flux off the end of that tip. But I would simply take that sandpaper, put it back up on the pile by the sink when I'm all said and done. But we have our little cam. The first thing we want to do is we want to push this onto the end of our motor. So what you do is you go ahead and you stand up and you kind of lean in, and we don't want this centered, we want it off balance. So off to one side, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lean in to that glue stick. And I spin that around. That's going to help kind of keep that weight on there. I'm going to start with soldering the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring the soldering tip down to the metal. So I'm actually touching the brass tab. I bring the solder in and it's going to melt. And if it kind of goes off to the side, I can scoop it up. But I'm going to let it run. Okay, so you can see I kind of let it run on there. And then I let go. So I should see it actually melt and run onto that brass tab. So once again, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to press and hold. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, let it kind of run and bond to that brass tab. If it would get onto the metal, so you'll notice there's the metal body frame. You don't want your solder touching that metal body frame, because if it does, it can short the motor out and it just doesn't turn on. Okay, so you want to make sure that connection is nice and solid, but that it's off the metal frame. Right, so that's why I have the glue stick on and I'm soldering on this side. Now when it comes to your switch, it can be a little tricky sometimes with the wires. You can see it kind of wants to bend around. Remember, you can always bend those wires. The other thing I like to do is you can either have your partner help you, or I like to take the wire strippers and just lay it right across the top of that so it stops moving on you. But once again, you're going to do the same thing. I'm going to come down here to this little brass tab. I'm going to hold it right up against it. I'm going to bring the solder in, let it melt a little bit. I'm going to go 1 1,000, 2 1,000, really letting it bond and run. I do the same thing on the other side. I bring it in, 1 1,000, 2 1,000. Once it starts melting, let it run. Now, if it does what it just did to me right here and it touches each other, right, and it melts together, just take the soldering iron and kind of separate the solder so they're no longer touching. Right, so if you accidentally make one big blob, simply take the soldering iron, swipe down through the middle, separating that gap. You should have 2 solid connections. We do not test this, okay? If you have solid connections, we're going to put this on your robot, tape it down, then we will test whether it works or not. Do not put test batteries in here, because if you turn it on, it's going to act like a fish out of water and it's going to snap all your wires off. So do not put batteries in this yet. So I don't want to hear anybody saying, well, I thought the video showed me. It did not. Do not put batteries in here yet. Our next step is we now have a cup that's got our legs on it. We now have a power supply, which is our motor circuit or motor loop. We have to attach the two together. Now don't forget too, when you're all said and done, you'll put this solder back. If you're all done at the end of class, make sure you wash your hands, right? So you don't have that toxic stuff sitting on your hands the rest of the day. You might want to go ahead and move the glue gun back to the other side so it's available for you to use. Put the soldering iron back to the end. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start working on attaching our motor circuit or loop to our frame. Now, once again, we're going to move to the glue gun, not the other way around. And you have a few choices, okay? You're going to attach your motor to your cup. But there's a key thing here. You see these vents? Those vents are how your motor breathes. You do not want to fill those with hot glue, and you do not want to cover them with duct tape. Because if you cover your nose and mouth with hot glue and duct tape, you wouldn't be able to breathe, and eventually you would not be able to function or live, right? Your motor's the same way. You want to keep it breathing. So when you go to put it down, it's fine if it's sitting down, because you'll see there's a gap down here, right? But the key thing here is this has to be able to swivel. Now it's up to you. Your motor can go on top. If you want your motor to go off to the side and spin like this, it could. If you want to glue it on the inside, which some people do sometimes, right? They glue it down here on the inside of the cup and then they have it freely spin like this. You can do it wherever you want to put it, as long as it freely spins, okay? Now, if you want to hide your cords by punching holes through your cup, once again, you need to let your instructor know. They'll help you with that step. I'm going to go ahead, and for my purposes on this one, I'm going to go ahead and stick my motor on the top. Now, I'm going to put that vent down to the bottom, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right between that vent with some hot glue. So I'm just going to go like this with hot glue, and then down on that bottom edge. And I'm going to set this on the cup, and I'm going to make sure that my glue stick can spin. And once again, I'm going to hold that for about 20 to 30 seconds, letting it dry. And just like the markers, I need to reinforce this connection with duct tape. So what I'm going to do is I may have some left over, and if I do, I'm going to reuse that. I'm going to take tape, and I'm going to go right next to the motor just like before. And it's fine if you cover up your solder connections. Sometimes that helps keep them a little more solid, right? But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run some tape down over the top, going horizontally. And I'm going to run some tape going vertically to lock that motor in place. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tape that motor down so it can't flop around on me and break. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the battery pack. Sometimes people put it inside, right, using hot glue. Just remember, you have to be able to get the batteries out of here, okay? Sometimes people forget about the fact that they need to remove these batteries. I'm going to go ahead and put mine on the outside of the cup, simply over here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run a little glue along the cup, or you could run it along the battery pack. And I'm just going to simply glue it in back over here by this marker. If you want, you could always come back, put a little glue on the side, because I can't really tape this one in as much, right? So I got to depend a little bit more on the hot glue on this one. But I want to make sure my hot glue doesn't interfere with my battery pack. But once again, I'm going to go ahead and hold that for about 20 to 30 seconds, letting it dry. You then have your switch. Once again, if I wanted it to go inside the cup, you could poke some holes, but once again, your instructor would help you with that. But it's super easy just to simply glue the switch onto the side of the cup so that I can turn it on and off. The key here, though, is making sure you don't squeeze any glue inside the ends of the switch. Just put it along the side, because if you put glue in the switch, it tends to not work very well. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the outside edge of the switch. I'm then going to go ahead, put it down here on the side of my cup. And once again, I would hold for about 20 to 30 seconds. Now with the switch and these wires, if you want to use a little duct tape to hold them down, you're more than welcome to. Once again, I'm going to use speed, tear some little strips. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little tape horizontally and vertically along the switch, just holding it in place. Once I've done that, I should have where I can simply switch my switch on and off. Now, our next step, and I'm going to look, going up on mine is off, down is on, down is off. So our next step is to go ahead and try some test batteries in it to make sure it works before we go to decorate it. Once it's working, we're going to go ahead and decorate it, which you'll still need the glue gun for, so make sure you keep that plugged in. But so once again, back at my desk where you saw the test batteries, you're going to grab them. Now make sure you notice there's going to be a positive sign and negative sign. The bump is your positive. So you're going to put your test batteries in, making sure you have them in the correct direction. You then can go ahead and turn it on and test to see if it works. Now, you've covered up a lot of its ability to breathe, so you don't want to run a Scribble Bot for more than about 30 to 40 seconds at a time. You also don't want to run the test batteries dead because your partner needs them. So if it's working, you're going to simply go ahead, pop the batteries out, let your partner test them. If your partner's done testing them and you're on to decorating, you're going to go ahead and put these batteries away for now, because you'll get real batteries that you would get for paying your lab fee when you go to take this home. And at the end of class, when it's cleanup time, you and your partner are going to put your Scribble Bots and any of your other pieces in the bin. So if it's the start of class and you haven't gotten anything done, you're going to put these in, but you're going to trade your Lego bin for a blue bin, and you will go ahead and keep this underneath your desk